All right, welcome everyone. Welcome all my lovely, happy, crumpin' wargamers. Today we're bringing on my second favorite army in the universe of Warhammer 40,000. We are, of course, talking about the Adeptus Custodes. If this is your first time stopping in, what we're going to do on this tier list is a little bit different than some of the other ones you may watch. We actually go really in depth on all the tactical analyses, and I've got access to all the statistical damage profiles for all of our units and like how much damage they do into other units in the game, which helps you plan your armies so that you can be the most successful wargamer that you possibly can. Um, as I go through the data sheets and as I go through all the spreadsheets in this presentation, I will actually put them in the links, or I'll put the links down in the description below so that you can access it whenever your heart desires. So let's just start getting into it. Sorry, I just got up right here. Today, and only today, we're talking about the Adeptus Custodes. All right, let's just hop right in it. We're going to start talking about our beautiful, beautiful rules for the new game. All right, so the rules are pretty simple. We now have martial katas. And let me just actually go to the katas so that you guys can kind of read along with me here. The katas are pretty simple. They go, let me just scroll to the top. They go, we can have a couple different choices. Every single combat phase, we get to choose one of these really super strong abilities. These super strong abilities are Katara Stance. Each time a melee attack targets this unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. Sustained hits or lethal hits. These are all really strong, but as you'll notice, actually many times we want the sustained hits over the lethal hits, even against stronger things. And I'm going to explain that why in the damage calculations. Like sustained hits actually tends to do more damage to big monsters than lethal hits, which is pretty surprising actually. But I'll show you the damage, or I'll show you the math on how that works out. All right. Beyond that, we as Custodes, now we're essentially the Emperor's Chosen. So we have a 4 against mortals, and that's really good. That's no problem at all. Our stratagems, once again in 10th edition, are pretty dang good. We got really solid ones. Slayer of Nightmares, add 1 to the wound roll against vehicles and monsters. This is super cool. It can be used in the shooting or the melee phase. You're pretty much only going to really want to use it in the melee phase, though. Unwavering Sentinels fights first. All right, here's the deal about this. This fights first is super, super awesome. Super awesome, because we can actually use it like 3 times in the same phase. So as you'll see when we get to Trajan Valerian, he gets his unit fights first. So, but that's not a stratagem, so they can just fight first. And then you spend 2 CP to make another unit that was charged fight first. And then your shield captain, who's going to be attached to your Terminator unit or your Custodian Guard unit, can also use another stratagem to make you fight first. So you can have like 3 units fighting first in the same turn, and that's insane. The new rule with Custodes is don't charge Custodes because we will slay you. Avenge the Fallen, you'll add 1 to your tax characteristic. It'll be rarely used, but sometimes it'll be really beneficial. I think it's really good on your 10-man Custodian Guard squads, which, surprise, surprise, guys, we're going to be taking 10-man Custodian Guard squads. Arcane Genetic Alchemy is a little bit different now. Instead of Transhuman, you get -1 to damage. This is awesome, and you're going to use it a bunch. One of the really cool things about Custodes is our shield captains let us use a stratagem for free, even if it's already been used. Tommy, yeah, man, dude, love the fights first one. I agree, it's amazing. But yeah, so this -1 damage is every bit as impactful as that fights first one, right? Because let's say you have a unit of wardens and they're the only visible target. Well, they're going to be -1 damage, and as we'll see, they'll have some other defensive buffs. And then somehow he deep strikes, he does some shenanigans, and he wants to attack another unit and make them -1, and you want to make them -1 damage in the same phase. Well, suddenly your shield captains can use the ability to make any stratagem 0 CP, and then they can use the stratagem again. It's really, really freaking amazing what Custodians can do when we stack our characters with our stratagems. Then we have Vigil Unending. This one's absolutely amazing. You get to resurrect a Custodian Guardian or a Terminator or a Warden. It's unbelievably strong, and it's going to be spammed like mad. You're going to use it literally every single turn. The only restriction on it is every unit can only benefit from it once. But once again, you can resurrect 2 Custodians a turn because you spend 1 CP to resurrect it from one squad, and then you spend another CP, you use your shield captain's ability to use a stratagem on the other squad, right? This can get you a bonus 2 inches of movement, so you can get closer to your opponents with it. It can just buff up a unit that's been beat down. An entire Custodian is actually way bigger deal than resurrecting basically any other model in the game, so that's pretty awesome. All right, so let's start talking about the tiers. Oh, actually, you know what? Sorry, I went a little too fast. Enhancements. Our enhancements, I think, are kind of weak, but we do have one that's freaking amazing. Okay. Unstoppable Destroyer, I think it's kind of sucks. Basically, you're going to cause a few mortals when you charge, which is kind of useless because it's only D3. And once per game, you can make things take Battle Shock. Battle Shock is cool, but I don't think we really need it. Hey, Shu Rin, happy to see you back, man. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, Tommy. I was looking at our stratagems. Resurrecting Custodian for 1 CP is absolutely nuts. But yeah, so Unstoppable Destroyer, I think it's a fail. I don't think you're going to take this one very often. Although Battle Shock tests are cool, I got to be honest with you. I think I'm the only time I really am going to force Battle Shocks is by killing my opponent or by using my Witch Seeker's Purgation Flames, which we'll get to. So Unstoppable Destroyer is kind of fail on the enhancements, but you know it is what it is. Inspirational Exemplar. This one is a little bit interesting because it's going to give your leader a 5-up leadership characteristic. And once per game, you can unbattle shock a Custodian unit. And that's actually a really big deal because if you're battle shocked, you can't resurrect a Custodian or you can't have any of your stratagems used on you. And that's a really big problem. So this one is interesting to me. I don't really think I'm going to be using it, but if my list has a few points left over, which is often the case in Custodes armies, I can see it definitely being taken. Then we have the Veiled Blade, which everyone wants to love because it can make your melee guys a little bit more of a monster at the +2 attacks. But realistically, our characters don't kill anymore. That's not 9th edition was an entire edition ago, so we're gonna really have to change our mindset to be 10th edition, not 9th edition. Your characters are not the things that are going in and slaughtering units anymore. Previously, I was running Hero Hammer and I was letting my characters go out and just basically run the entire game for me. I don't think that's the case anymore. And as you guys get a little more experience with 10th edition, I think you'll notice that that is pretty darn true. Our leaders are amazing for their abilities, not necessarily for their killiness. Now, it is pretty cool because once per game, you can triple your objective control characteristic, which can actually be very clutch for stealing some nice primary. Yeah, Shubin, absolutely. Spamming Arcane Genetic Alchemy is pretty darn awesome. I can absolutely see spamming that for sure. And because Custodes have access to the 0 CP getting to use the stratagem second time, we're going to be able to spam all of those things. And then finally, we have the Ceaseless Hunter. This is the one that I am so excited about. I think this is by far our best enhancement. And I also think it's kind of indicative of the edition we're in. So you can always be eligible to fall, back, shoot, and charge. I am dropping this on either a huge Custodian Guardian squad or my Terminator squad. Drop that once per game, add once per game, you get to make a normal move when the enemy moves within 9 inches of you. So that's also very dang strong. Why is that super strong? Well, you can kind of force your opponent into really bad situations, and you can use bonus movement to get up the field. Or you can get out of range of someone who's trying to charge you. This is so unbelievably powerful, guys. So Ceaseless Hunter will be taken in absolutely every single list. All right, now, let's start the tier list in full, everybody. All right, our number one guy. We're going to bring him in. The boss, the legend himself, Mr. Trajan Valoris. Trajan Valoris invented the Blood Games, and he is a legend in his own right. Now, in the previous edition, he was a beat stick. He was coming in, he was slaughtering people. He still hits pretty well because he's got that AP2, but he's not nearly the beat stick that he was. So, let me explain why. So he's only AP2, and AP2 is not AP3. And he's only got 6 attacks, and he doesn't reroll hits anymore. So it's pretty often for him to roll a 1 and then roll a 1. The way you want to use Trajan is before his special abilities. So his special abilities are once per game, this guy is going to let you fight first, or he can take a 2-up invuln, or he can double his attacks to be 12 attacks. I think you'll very rarely use the double attacks thing. I also think you'll very rarely take the 2-up invuln. I actually did take it yesterday in a match, but that was a really unique situation. I don't think that's going to come up very often. You're almost always going to use his ability to make his squad fights first. It just makes charging him almost impossible. So here's the strategy, guys. You're going to want to take Mr. Trajan, and you're going to want to drop him in a unit of Wardens. The Wardens activate their 4-up Feel No Pain in the shooting phase, so your entire enemy's army just fires into your Wardens. You make them -1 damage. They have a 4-up Feel No Pain. Nothing dies because how the hell do you kill that? And then they charge you in the next phase. Well, you're screwed because you don't have a 4-up Feel No Pain anymore. However, Trajan makes you fight first. And because of what the new rules of the game, the non-player actually takes the first activation in each sequence. So suddenly you charge in and the Wardens and Trajan slaughter you. So I think Trajan goes with Wardens. That doesn't necessarily have to be true. There's play for other things. Trajan does one other really critical thing. What he does is he makes the characteristics of the unit he's attached to unmodifiable. Let me tell you how freaking impactful this is, guys. Barbed gaunts, which are unreasonably cheap, they make you -2 to your movement characteristic, and -2 to your advance, and -2 to your charge. Those things are stupid, and they do it to every infantry unit they hit, not just the one, not only targeting one. However, Trajan looks at them, gives them the middle finger, and says, "Nah, I'm going to keep moving the exact same speed because you can't modify my move characteristic," which is so powerful. Death Guard cannot make them -1 toughness. It's exceptionally strong. You can never minus them. So it's a very, very powerful ability that Trajan has, and we love him for it. So because of this, and the final thing is Trajan is no longer 200 points. He's now 145 points, which is literally only 25 points more expensive than a normal shield captain. So Trajan goes up to the S. The guy's freaking incredible. He's cheaper. He buffs the crap out of the unit he's in. And he's awesome, man. And he's not overpriced at all anymore. So we love him. Now, this is sad. This is very, very sad. The next guy we have to talk about is the bike captain on Dawn Eagle Jet Bike. Guys, this was my second favorite in my Custodian for last edition. And you guys know I love my Custodes last edition. This dude is garbage now. He's 160 points. He hits way less hard than he used to. You can't stack any of the Warlord traits on him. And he doesn't give rerolls anymore. All of his weapons are way worse. He lost AP. Salvo launchers are garbage now. And he does have a very interesting ability. And I'm going to talk about the interesting ability a little bit later when we get to the Vertis Praetors. But I can pretty much guarantee you guys, you're not running this dude. He's probably the worst in the Codex. However, there is a niche use for him, which might come up, and I am experimenting with it. It's just he's so expensive for doing so little now. Fly was nerfed. He lost movement on top of Fly being nerfed. And man, he's just so darn hard to justify. Now, his special rule is that once per game, if he's attached to his unit of bikers, he can make them fall back or make a normal movement at the end of the fight phase, which means you can do this at the end of your opponent's fight phase, which means you can take a normal move, and then in your turn, you can also do a normal move. It's amazing for taking objectives. It's amazing for crushing people. It can really swing games. Shurin, I'm reading it right now. Sealess Hunter on the bike captain. Yeah, I don't think so, man. Because his natural ability is already to let them fall back in the fight phase, in your enemy's fight phase, once per game. So I don't think you're ever going to put it, because he just does nothing. His damage output is abysmal. I'll show you when I get to the Vertis Praetors exactly how bad the bikes are now, because I'm going to bring up the spreadsheet for it for you guys, but it's just not good. Let's talk about Valerian. I actually like Valerian. Valerian's pretty cheap. He hits fairly reasonably hard, and his ability makes a unit an additional -1 melee or -1 AP in melee. This can make it very hard to kill a block of Custodes. So if you stack him, say, with like Wardens, so the Wardens will get the Feel No Pain in the shooting phase. You can't kill the Wardens, then you charge the Wardens, and then you're going to be -1 AP against them, so they're saving everything essentially on 3s. Can make them very brutal, and he's a little bit cheaper than Trajan. And he's got a little uniqueness. I actually think Valerian is usable in this edition, where I thought he was pretty much garbage in the last edition. So he definitely gained some points. His tactics are kind of fascinating, because you really want him to be in melee, but you can't stack him with another leader to get you into melee. So it's a little strange. Then we have the shield captain in Terminator armor. This guy's freaking awesome. I love him. He's so darn strong. He's one of the prime candidates for Ceaseless Hunter for the fallback shoot and charge. This guy is so powerful. His points, I think he's like 120. He might be 115. He gives you access to a stratagem, one per battle round. That's going to be free, and you can use it even if you've already used the stratagem. So dang useful. He fights on death, which that's not really that useful. But attaching him to a unit of your Terminators and giving them fallback and charge is crazy. So he's S tier provincially with a, let's put him in A tier, because he's good, and the enhancement is what takes him to S tier. So the enhancement is what really makes him just absolutely stunningly amazing. Because when you give that big block of unit of Terminators, which you'll find out are unbelievably efficient, holy crap, this guy puts in work. Then we have normal shield captain on foot. Once again, in the A, he's freaking awesome. He has a really cool ability where he gives you access to 2 katas. Now, when I start going through the damage sheets when we get into the unit, so I'm going to talk about it for the Custodian Guards, the Wardens, the Terminators, and all that. I'm not doing it for the characters. What's going to happen is you're going to see that he gives them both sustained and lethal hits. Those things stack upon each other in a really fascinating way, and he really increases the damage output of his units. He can also make his unit -1 to hit and then still give them sustained hit. So there's really interesting combinations with him. He is actually worth taking now. And it's awesome. Actually, just a really quick aside before I go any further, let me talk about the weapons that we take. You're always taking spears. You're never going to take swords. You're never going to take axes. Axes hitting on 3s and only having an AP of 1, there's essentially no point, because as you'll see in just a little bit, all of your units will always be re-rolling wound rolls anyway. So you don't really necessarily need the strength 9, and the hitting on 3s is just a huge problem. So all your guys, you're going to rip all the weapons off and you're going to put spears on instead. I know it sucks to hear, but it's just what we need to do because the damage is so much better with spears than with anything else. Now let me talk about this guy. So this guy was my favorite character from the previous edition, the Blade Champion, the Blade Wizard as some call him. He was absolutely amazing. I was giving, because I was always running Shadow Keepers, so I was giving him the Ignore Invulns. I was giving him, and you know, he had this 6-inch heroic intervention, and then he was taking the Eagle's Eye for the 1 phase per game, 3 of Invuln, and he had the Transhitment. He was just absolutely unbelievable. He was slaughtering characters left and right. If you guys remember my old video on the greatest trade piece, he was the single best trading piece in the entire game, bar none. Points value, absolutely unbelievable. I have a question here from Shuvin. What do I think of taking 1 shield to take 3 damage weapons? I can see it. I actually don't think that's a bad idea. You might want to run the 1 shield. I can see it, but you're not going to take many. So if you're running a 10-man of guard, okay, maybe you're going to take 2 shields at that point. That's actually a really good point. So I was maybe a little hyperbolic when I said you're only ever taking spears, but the vast majority of your weapons will be spears. Because if you guys don't know, shields now give you +1 wound. They don't give you +1 armor anymore. And swords are only damage 1. So their damage profile drops off a lot. However, that is a really good point. In a unit of Custodian Guards, you might take 2 shields if you're taking a max size squad. So that's a good point. Thank you for your question. But yeah, so the Blade Wizard now. What does the Blade Wizard now do? Now, he gets +2 to the advance roll, +2 to the charge roll of his unit, and 1 phase per game. 1 glorious phase selected in the charge phase, he gives you advance and charge. That gives a normal unit of Custodian Guards a 28-inch threat range. 28-inch threat range. This is insanely good. Minimum advancing of 9. Minimum charge is going to be 4. Guys, holy crap. That is so powerful. So darn powerful. Yeah, Andrew, absolutely. Using the shield captains to use the free stratagem for the -1 damage, absolutely. Denise came out and they said that they like the shield captain with an axe and veiled blade with 8 attacks. I get it. I get what you're saying, but let me just bear with me for maybe just a few more, maybe like 5 more minutes when I get into the actual damage profiles, and I'll kind of show you the math on how it's really not that worth it. But I can understand maybe the argument if you have the bonus points to put the Veiled Blade on someone like that. I get that. I do get that. All right. So we do have a few other characters to talk about. You got a Leia and you got the Knight Centura. I'm not really going to go too in depth with them. They can give a scout move, and they can give. I think, what does a Leia do? She gives like the -1 to hit. Let me just pull her up real quick. Sorry, that's the wrong one. That was a nightmare. All right, yeah. Let me pull a Leia up here real quick. When I did the damage profiles, they were not the best. Let me pull her. Where are you, Alea? Where are you? Here she is. So she has to feel no pain, and she can give scouts to her unit. The only Sisters of Silence I'm really thinking about taking right now is going to be the Witch Seekers anyway. Blade gives rerolls. Sorry, I have a comment here where someone says the Blade gives rerolls. I'm not sure what you're saying, man. He definitely gives +2 to the advance and charge. I'll go read it for you in just a moment. But let me finish talking about Leia here. She can give 6-inch scout move, but your Witch Seekers already have it, and I don't really think that any of the other sister units you really necessarily need the scout move on. So the Sisters of Silence kind of took a beating because in the last edition you would use them to screen smites and to make everyone minuses to their psychic abilities. They are a lot more culpable now. They are a lot more culpable now to the psychic abilities because they only have a 3-up Funnel Pain, not untargetable and were unaffectable. So I don't necessarily enjoy them all that much. So Alea, I don't know. Maybe you could possibly use her, but she's not great. I'm actually probably going to drop her into a C tier. The Knight Centura here, when we look at her, she's going to add 2 to the move characteristic of models in a unit and 2 to the advance and charge rolls for a model. So if you want to run her with a knight with a unit of Vigilators, I actually can see this. Vigilators actually aren't that bad. Their stock goes up a ton when they're going into like Grey Knights or Thousand Suns, things like that. But there's still only 2 attacks, and I'll get to the damage profile. It's not the best, but I understand an argument for running them with Vigilators. So what we'll do here, let's go back to this tier list. I'm going to drop Alea into C tier, but I'll keep the Knight Centura in B tier because there is a little use there. Because giving those Vigilators that scout move, I can actually see how that works. All right, now, oh, is he an auto take in 9th edition? Who are you referring to, Mike, when you say is he an auto take? Are you talking about the Blade Champ? Because the Blade Champ, yeah, you're going to be running this guy. You might be taking multiple versions of this guy. Well, he's dude, I completely screwed that up. I'm sorry. You're 100% right. He has reroll advance and charge rolls. I was reading the Knight Centura and I completely screwed all that up. Thanks for fixing me. Thanks for fixing me, Mike. You or not Mike, who said that to me? That was Zangun. Thanks, Zangun. He gives you the reroll advances and charges. Forgive me, everybody. I mixed that up with the Knight Centura there. Still exceptionally valuable for giving you those rerolls. It's really, really powerful. And the fact that he declares the charge in the turn in which they advanced is in the charge phase is pretty darn important. So he's really, really dang good. So yeah, but he's not +2. He's rerolls, which actually I like just as much. But I apologize if I confused anyone there. But we'll move on. So let's get right into the damage data sheets. We have Custodian Guard. Custodian Guards are legends this edition. They are absolutely legends here. Let me show you this damage profile. I'm going to pull up this sheet here and just make sure I'm on the right one. Custodes damage profile. All right, so if you guys don't know how to read these, I'm going to help you with it. So this is per model in the unit. So we have a Custodian Guard with a spear here, okay? This spear is going to be doing 3.9 damage on average to Termagants from one guy. It'll be doing 2.6 damages to a Battle Sister per model. Gene Stealer 4.4. So it'll kill, this is the way you read these, okay? It astronomically goes up when you put them on an objective. When you put them on an objective and they're rerolling all wound rolls, because remember they're normally rerolling wound rolls of 1, but when you give them all wound rolls, their damage astronomically goes up. And as you can actually see, even when we get to the tough guys like the Knight Valiants here with the spear, they're dealing 1.7 damage per model into like a Land Raider, and into a Knight Despoiler, they're going to be dealing 2.3 points of damage. That's actually really, really good. But what's even more impressive when we go to the PPP, this is like points spent per points killed. We can look at the spear here with their full rerolls. And into some of the really tough things, the Land Raider here, it's going to be a 1.2 damage. A Knight Valiant is going to be a 1.1. That means 1 point of damage per point spent, which is really, really awesome. Really, really dang awesome. So a 1-point ratio on the PPP is absolutely unbelievably strong. And our Custodian Guard are so dang efficient at this. Check that out. They're good against literally everything. You see all this green? This is a amazing profile into the entire game right here. Custodian Guards are legends. When we activate the special kata rules of sustained hits or lethal hits, let me show you what happens here. So this is in sustained hits. They get even more efficient with their spears. They're going to be going 1.5 into Termagants. They're going to be going 1.0 into Beast Snagas. They're going to be going 0.9 into Crisis Suits. Guys, these numbers are astronomically high. 0.9 into the Knight Valiant. This is such a big deal. 0.7 into a Knight Despoiler. They're one of the most efficient things in the games at killing big knights. This is assuming, by the way, that they have full wound rerolls for controlling an objective, by the way. Okay? So your Custodian Guardians are absolutely amazing now. I do want to show you this really cool thing here. So this is going to be comparing the sustained hits to the lethal hits. And this is really shocking. So when you look at the Knight Despoiler right here, we get a PPP of 0.7 and then of 0.9 into the Knight Valiant. So let's go down to where I did the lethal hits for the Custodians. Knight Valiant actually goes up to 1.0, and the Knight Despoiler stays the same at 0.7. So they're actually a little bit more efficient with exploding sixes than they are with auto wounding on sixes. And that's because, this is assuming, by the way, remember that they're controlling an objective, that they get full wound rerolls. So their efficiency is just absolutely astronomical. We freaking love them. So those are custodian guards, guys. Then once again, once per game, they can also shoot twice, and that can be really, really useful as well. So our custodian guards are going to be S tier for sure. I'm experimenting with how I want to run them. You can be running them in 5-mans, you can be running them in 10-mans, or is it 9? Let me look at the points here. Is this the correct one? 9. This is it. So if we look at this, custodian guards, yeah, 10-mans, 9-mans, 10-mans. I actually like big squads, 5s, 9s, and 10s. Big squads are really good. For when you're running big squads now in the new edition, by the way, you're almost always going to need access to fallback and shoot and charge, which is why I really want my shield captain who has that enhancement to be going with the custodian guards. Or with the Terminators, as we'll see in just a little bit, because of the new rules with pile-in and consolidate, when you have to end within base-to-base contact if you can. This can lead to really funky situations where maybe there's a building in between all of your models, so you can only get 2 models in engagement range, and then 8 models can't fight at all because they would be moving further away, or it would put them in a situation where you couldn't have one in base-to-base contact. It gets really, really funky. So you desperately need the ability to fall back and charge so that you can actually reposition next turn. So that's a requirement, but it makes custodian guards unbelievably good. They're exceptionally efficient. Let's look at our Terminators now. Our Terminators are freaking insane. They're so dang good, guys. You're going to have custodian guards and you're going to have Terminators in every single list. These guys will be rerolling wound rolls against monsters, against vehicles, and against characters. Now, the trick is, everyone, when you have a character leading a unit, that unit has the character keyword, which means these guys get full wound rerolls against almost every target in the entire game, unless there's no lead or character with it, which is going to be pretty dang rare, seeing as how darn powerful leader units are. So these guys get full wound rerolls with their grenade launchers, which are a lot better. Their grenade launchers went up to AP 1. Wow. And they're getting full rerolls with their spear shots, which are now assault 2 instead of the rapid fire like they used to be. So you're always getting 2 shots with them. And then you're also going to be rerolling all of your melee. So let me show you the damage profile of these Terminators. And what you're going to see is that the PPP is a little bit worse for the Terminators, but that's simply because Terminators cost more points than Custodian Guards, okay? Let me just scroll out here. So this is the profiles. When you combine their shooting from their grenades and their axes, they actually have a really good PPP into most things. And this is a unit that's not made for shooting. I got a question. Won't Knights stand back and shoot rather than get into guards on objectives? Yeah, probably, Tommy. But realistically, that's awesome because then you're just holding the objectives and they can't see you because you're going to hide them behind buildings and things. Even though they have the towering rule, you just hide them behind windowless buildings and they still won't be able to draw line of sight, and then you win the game. So who cares, right? So they're going to have to come to you. Like, otherwise, they just let you win the game because no one holds objectives like Custodes hold objectives. So don't. So that's a non-problem. Yeah. So we're talking about the Terminators and their damage output. So their shooting output makes them look like a dedicated shooting unit, but they're not a dedicated shooting unit, which is freaking amazing. So then let me show you the damage profile, the difference between an axe. Let's do it on damage, though, because I don't want to confuse you with PPP. Of an axe versus a spear, okay? So we have a spear here, and then we have an axe here. The axe is on average going to be doing 2.3 damage to Termagant unit, and it's going to be doing 3.5 damage to Termagants with the spears. So the damage is actually a really big difference. Let's put it to against one of the big knights. Okay, so this is the axe with our reroll. Let me make sure I'm on the same line here. So you're going to be doing a Land Raider 1.9 damage, where with your spear you're going to be doing 2.3 damage. And it's really interesting. The only unit that it's really better to have the axe for is the Knight Valiant itself. You do a little bit more damage against the Knight Valiant than you do with the spear, but the spear is just infinitely better into almost everything else in the game. Terminators, or nope, Raiders, yeah. Terminators, let's look here. The axe with rerolls is going to be doing 3 exactly. A spear with rerolling is going to be doing 2.1. So it is better into Terminators as well. So you're gonna, if you take an axe, you're gonna be better into Terminators, and you're gonna be better into Knight Valiants. But with spears, you're gonna be doing better into literally everything else. Oh, hey Mike. Yeah. I think Trajan's absolutely a auto take. Thanks for clarifying who you're talking about. Yeah, Trajan's really dang good. I'm probably running him with Wardens, and I'll explain why in just a moment. So these Terminators, their damage output is just astronomical, and they have a utility. They can deep strike, and trust me, you're always going to be rapid ingressing one unit because you rapid ingress in your opponent's turn. Then they get a full turn of movement in your turn, and then they just absolutely obliterate. And if you want to, you give their shield captain, either give them the Veiled Blade or give them the fallback shoot and charge. So it's really strong. And of course, you're almost always taking the Vexillas because the Vexillas will be giving you OC3. Pretty much always taking a Vexilla in a unit. All right, cool. So you guys know my love for Terminators. Oh yeah, their other ability is once per game they can kind of do a redeploy. So at the end of your opponent's turn, you can take them off the field and then put them back on the field in the movement phase of your turn. So it really helps you score missions as well. Yeah, Terminators are just bananas good, which is really cool because at last edition they were really only useful for behind enemy lines. Now they're freaking amazing, and I love them. All right, let's talk about Wardens. Wardens are going solidly in the B tier. I think most armies are going to want to include 1 unit of Wardens. Warden's damage output is nowhere near the damage output of your Custodian Guard or your Terminators, and that's because they don't get the wound rerolls. That's okay, because that's not their job. A Warden's job is to not die. When you take a unit of Wardens and you put them in the middle of the battlefield, because sometimes you maybe have to score area denial, or sometimes maybe you just have to block the middle lane. You have to have a unit that can stand there and not die. You put a unit of 6 Wardens with Trajan Valoris in the middle of the battlefield. You pop their once per game 4-up Feel No Pain. So suddenly these guys are at a 2-up. Hopefully you have them in cover, so they're at a 2-up with cover, 4-up with a 4-up Feel No Pain. And you can even use the strat to make them -1 damage. Nothing in the game is actually going to kill that. Wraith Knights won't kill that, which is amazing that there's something that a Wraith Knight won't kill, because holy crap, don't get me started on the Eldar. So that unit of Wardens will not die to anything. And then, if you have Trajan with them, when they're charged in the charge phase, suddenly they'll fight first, okay? Their job is not to necessarily kill a lot. Their job is to not die for a turn. So I think you're going to take 1 unit of Wardens. My first few games, I was running 2 of them. I found that really excessive, but the 1 unit is absolutely amazing, and it's really dang good. So I'm putting them solidly in the B tier because they're not going to make up the core of your army, but I still believe you're almost always going to want 1 unit of Wardens. It's really interesting that they're not the murder buckets that they were last edition, and now it's the Custodian Guard who are actually the murder buckets. Custodian Guard have one of the most efficient profiles in the entire game right now, which is just absolutely awesome. So those were the Wardens. Okay, let's look next at our Land Raider. All right, our Land Raider is cool. I'm not sure how to rate the Land Raider because I don't know if it's actually going to be used. Some people were talking about how good its damage is, and its damage really isn't that bad, but it's not a gun platform. Its job is to move up, let you get out, and then still charge. That's what its job is. But it only moves 10 inches now. It is pretty darn hard to kill, but it's still going to die to Guard. It's still going to die to Eldar. It's still going to die to any Oath of the Moment Space Marines. So I'm a little confused by this thing. I don't necessarily know where to put it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the C tier, which is a lot better than it was in last edition. That doesn't mean I think this unit sucks, guys. When I say C tier, I mean it's like the C tier is the tier where, yeah, the things are usable, but you really have to think about how and why you're going to be using them. B tier is going to be the things that's like, okay, cool, these are basically usable in any army. I understand why you include it. You never really have to explain it to me. A tier is the things that are like, yeah, these are freaking great. We love them. We're going to be using them. S tier is the things that will be in every single army. Every single army, you're going to include a Blade Champ. Every single army, you will include the Custodian Guard and Terminators, stuff like that. Yeah, so we got Reynolds here. He says, in my opinion, the Land Raider is fine, but mostly into other factions, like us, that do not have a ton of shooting to put into it. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. But I don't agree with your example. He says, like against Chaos Space Marines, park it in the middle and call it a day. Yeah, I don't agree with that, bud. So I'll share a sheet with you guys talking about a Freaking ectoplasmic cannon equipped Forge Fiend. It's the most efficient gunboat in the game, essentially. And so I don't necessarily agree with the example you gave, but I totally agree with the reasoning you have. So I'm gonna keep it there and see. It is usable. It can have 6 Custodes unit. That can be Terminators actually, by the way, which is pretty cool because you can just load Terminators in the Land Raider, roll the Land Raider up, let the Terminators out, then let them charge. That's actually quite a decent strategy because it doesn't say that Terminators take 2 slots or anything like that. Just as Adeptus Custodes infantry. All right, then we're gonna look at the Venerable Contemptor. This thing's cool, man. I like him. I like his role. His shooting's actually not that great. Oh, let me show you that Land Raider's profile here. Because I put him in there specifically for someone. Yep. Actually, Reynolds, I think I put him in there for you. Let's look at the Godhammer Las Cannon. We'll look at his PPP because that's what really kind of matters. The Land Raider. It's actually pretty terrible. So it sucks into almost everything. It's okay into a Knight Despoiler, I guess, but it's not really good at anything. It's just kind of like bonus shots, right? The job of the Land Raider is to get your Custodes to where they're going. It's not to kill things. Its damage output is actually pretty abysmal for its points cost. So, if you were thinking about the Land Raider is really good because it has a Blitz skill of 2 with Godhammer Las Cannons, sorry guys, that's just not the way it works. This is a unit that's no longer in the game, so the Vexilla. But like I said, you're always going to include Vexillas in every single squad you take because it's going to give you OC3. You need that Vexilla. That OC3 is such a big deal. All right, guys. The biggest losers of the actual codex is the Vertis Praetors. Now, to be fair, when you combine the Vertis Praetors with the Shield Captain, you might have a combo that is usable. But these guys got way worse, way worse. And they coupled it with the fact that they went up in cost. It is the worst possible combination. These guys went up to 90 points. Salvo launchers, forgive my French, are just dog shit now. Salvo launchers suck. They're not good at all. And they move less fast now. And fly is severely nerfed in this edition. Yeah, right. Thank you, Zangon. Maybe make them an E tier. I probably should put an E tier in there. Like, dude, they're so bad, which really frustrates me because I was running a lot of bikes last edition. Now, the one caveat to this is if you're taking the Shield Captain with 2 bikes, that's 180 points plus 160 points. So you're looking at a 360 point unit or 350 point unit, something like that. Which is not something I ever want to take. They can, once per game, fall back or make a normal movement at the end of any fight phase, including your opponents. And that can be very useful for scoring points. It can be very useful for stealing objectives once. That is not worth 350-ish points, in my opinion. Not when we are starved for points as this faction. Vertis Praetors are terrible, and if you don't believe me, let's look at their damage profile. So where did I put them down here? Trajan, Vigilators, Vertis Praetors. All right. The Salvo Launcher, this is the PPP, 25.9 into Termagants. That's about the worst I've seen in the entire game. 9.0 into a Raider, which sucks terribly. Their best profile in the entire game is a 9.0 into a Raider, and that is terrible. So their best trade in the game is abysmal. So don't think that their Salvo Launchers are good. It's actual shit, which unfortunate. And then their spears just aren't good. They don't get to reroll wound rolls, and they don't get any to reroll hit rolls. They don't trade efficiently anywhere. They don't get below a 2 ever. Yeah, they just suck. Vertis Praetors are terrible. Don't take them. Sorry, guys. Maybe when the codex drops or something like that, but they suck. Let's see. These look like, I can't really tell, but they look like Prosecutors. Prosecutors are fine. They're cheap. You can take them in units of 4. So why not? I'm totally fine with it. I think it's a 40-point unit, if I'm not mistaken. And that's the rules commentary. Let me look at the points here. Prosecutors. Yeah, you can take a unit of 4 for 40 points. It's really easy to have 40 points left over in our army. So yeah, cool. Prosecutors can go right there. They're going to screen your backline. That's basically their entire job now. And that's fine. Because it's always good to have that. So they can go solidly in the B tier. This is going to be the Witch Seekers. I actually think Witch Seekers are really good. I'm going to put them in the A tier. These Witch Seekers have the ability to cause battle shock when they shoot. That is very dang valuable. Like extremely valuable. Let me actually pull them up here because I want to make sure I get this right. My confidence was shaken after I was pointed out I confused the Blade Champ with the Knights Insurers rules. Ugh. My confidence actually is not shaken, but I would like to read this for everyone, just so we make sure we don't confuse anybody. Here they are. Yeah, so each time this unit shoots, after a shot, select one enemy unit that was hit by one or more of those attacks. That unit must make a battle shock test. The really cool wording on this is select one enemy unit that was hit by one or more of those attacks. So if you have a squad of 5 or so, you can shoot 4 into a unit that you want to kill, and then you can shoot 1 into a unit that you just want to force a battle shock test on. Now, you can only choose one of those units to be battle shocked, but that's actually really valuable. Then you couple that with their inbuilt scout move. At 60 points, I think it's a valuable unit. I dropped them into the A tier because they're pretty awesome. I got a guy here who's saying that he thinks that they are B tier for him. I kind of understand that. I do understand your thought process for why you want to say that they're in the B tier. I just humbly disagree here. I think their utility is really, really important for us, and I like the Witch Seekers. So it's my tier list. They're dropping it right there. Tomorrow I'll go ahead and drop my first iteration of my competitive Custodes list. It's one that I'm looking like I might be taking to this year's WTC, and I'm going to be walking everyone through it. So, and Witch Seeker, there will be a unit of Witch Seekers in it. And then we have the Vigilators. Vigilators I'm going to drop into the C tier. They could potentially go in the B tier. And if you couple them with the Knights Centura, they can't. So it's true. I'll put them in the B tier. I do think Vigilators are a little overcosted. But when you run them with a Knights Centura and you get them that +2, that scout move, and the +2 to advance, and the +2 to charge, it does make them a little bit more interesting to me. Let's look at their damage profile here. As I put the Vigilators in here also. Vigilators. Here we are. Big Sword. So they trade pretty well into your Gene Stealers. They trade pretty well into Marines, into Purgators, Beast Nagas, Crisis Suits. They actually trade pretty well into a bunch of things. But they have that critical anti/devastating wounds rule against Psychers. So they're going to really trade up pretty heavily into like your Grey Knights and into your Thousand Sons. So I can see a use of them, especially when you're getting that +2 from the Knights Centura. I'm not running them, but I actually don't think they're bad. I would like to see them go down by about 2 to 3 points model. But yeah, I think they're a solid B tier unit. You could argue for C. I think I got distracted, guys. I don't think we actually talked about the Dreadnought. Let me explain. Let me go back to the Contender Dreadnought here. He went up in points. He did get some toughness. His multi-melta is not great. His combi weapon is not great. His melee is fine. The thing that saves him is his special rule. And when he dies on a 2-up, he stands back up with D6 wounds. Which basically means that anything in the game is going to kill him in shooting. But then they're also going to have to try to kill him again in the charge phase. And that is a problem. So he does have utility. I'm not personally going to be running him. I'm really interested to see how he fits in to some other people's list. I really am interested to see what's going to happen when we get our Forge World data sheets. Because don't forget, we are still keeping our Forge World data sheets in Custodes. It's going to happen. We have the exemption from the big Forge World ban. We just don't know when those are going to be released. But we'll definitely talk about it. Yeah, Zangoon, 6-inch is a freaking problem. He is not a turn 1 model. So you're going to probably be advancing on turn 1. And then hopefully getting him into the game in turn 2. Which is why I'm keeping him in C tier here. I think he has a use. I think he's a little bit less used than the Land Raider, but I also don't think he's abysmal. He does actually have a purpose. But like I said, I'm also not going to be running him. So guys, this is the tier list that we're starting with right now off of Custodes. So we got Trajan and the Blade Champ are both freaking amazing. The Blade Champ giving you those reroll advances and reroll charges is just super, super good. And then we have the Terminators and the Custodian Guards. I'm running... This is the combo I'm thinking about right now. There's a couple different ways to build the Custodes list. You can build an Assault Custodes list. What does that look like? Well, it looks like 4 or 3 10-man Custodian Guard squads, each with a Blade Champ. So they're all rerolling advances, rerolling charges, and advancing and charging. That's actually a pretty terrifying proposition for your opponent to try to deal with. Then you could be running that one big Terminator block with the Shield Captain. That's like a 4-unit army, but it's actually really doable. You don't have to run them all as 10-mans. You can run 1 as 10-mans, 2 as 5-mans. You're probably going to want a leader attached to every single unit that you're doing, because the leaders just have so much freaking value in this game. The Shield Captains and the Shield Captain Terminator armor, you probably only want 1 each, because that ability to use a stratagem for free you can only use it on one model that has that ability per battle round. So it's really, really powerful, but it is kind of like you don't need to spam those. The shield captain on foot, maybe you could spam their ability to double kata your units. I can definitely see that. As of right now, one warden unit. I'm probably running 2 to 3 custodian guard squads, probably 2 Terminator squads. Those Terminators are just absolute nightmares for anyone to deal with. I got a 1 unit of Witch Seekers. That's what I'm basically going with right now, and there might be a little bit of a wiggle room in there. Our best enhancement is 100% going to be the fallback shoot and charge. And guys, the Custodes are looking amazing. I'm really happy to say this because I think they're easily in the top 5 armies in the game right now. They're working really, really well. And I'd love to hear what you think. Go and type it down. Type it down in the comments how you're feeling about Custodes right now because this is absolutely amazing. My other main army is Orcs, and I did the tier list on them yesterday. If you haven't watched that, please go watch it. Orcs lost a huge step in this edition. I don't think they're in a great place. I definitely think there's some usability in them, and they do have some really cool tricks that I'll maybe make a video about later today or so. But they're not in the best place, even though I love them and I'm going to keep playing them. But Custodes are looking really hot right now. They're in a better place right now than they were at the end of 9th, which is pretty impressive. So I feel really, really good. We did lose our bikes, 100% lost our bikes, but our infantry got amazingly better. And it's really fascinating how much infantry we can field when we're not taking expensive bikes. So, any thoughts on allies? Yeah, Tommy, actually, I'm really glad you asked that because I was going to overlook that. Let me talk about the thoughts on allies. If you're playing in singles events, you're always going to be taking Kyria Draxus. Kyria Draxus is the Inquisitor who gives your unit the ability to not be targeted if they're outside of 18 inches. This is freaking amazing because that means you could run a huge Custodian Guard squad that is fairly vulnerable to firepower, and then suddenly no one can be shooting them. Yeah, Reynolds, there are people talking about large guard squads, and he's saying that there's fear even with a -1 damage. There's just too many factions that will be able to pick them up. You're correct, but the problem with that is, I mean, you are correct in that thought process. But yeah, you don't expose them. You hide them behind a building or something like that. Now, I am blessed because I play in WTC terrain, which is the best terrain in the entire game. If you're playing in sparse terrain, you're right. You might have a little bit of an argument where that's maybe not the best. But remember, all of our Custodes can deep strike as well, because deep striking is a really, really powerful ability now. And you can always rapid ingress. Yep, so our Wardens have the deep strike keyword, and our Custodian Guards have the deep strike keyword. You can always just deep strike your 10-man blob, rapid ingress them, then in your turn move them 6 inches and get a big charge. That's rerollable if you have a Blade Champ in it. So don't really worry too much. There's a lot of different strategies of how to get your Custodians into the game without getting shot. Deep strike your big old blob. I think that's an awesome idea. Or if you want to run the Blade Champ, run them up the board, hide them behind a building, and then in your go turn, that's when you advance and charge, rerolling your advances and your charge rolls. Yeah, WTC Terrain. I think they made a post on their Discord, Zangoon. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. Sorry if I'm not. The WCT Terrain should be appearing in about a week, if I'm not mistaken, from what they were announcing on the Discord. So hopefully we get the first preview in about a week. Yeah, I think I touch on Kyria Draxus, how she makes one of your units completely untargetable. This is really powerful because if you guys don't know, Guard has an unreasonable amount of super powerful indirect shooting because GW just said, hey, indirect's overpowered. Let's make it more powerful. Oh my gosh. So Kyria Draxus has a lot of utility in a Custodes army, and I like her a lot. So yeah. But that's what I'm thinking as far as allies are concerned. I wouldn't really be running the War Dogs or anything like that. And that's really for a very simple reason. I had this rationale in the 9th edition, and now I have this rationale in the 10th edition. Custodes are a superb medium to short range army. Superb medium to short range army. If you build your army to be kind of a long range army, you're failing. Now, there was the skew list when you're running 3 Caladiuses, which was a little bit of a difference, and I know that exists. But on average, in 9th edition, when we were taking like the 3 Helverins as our allies, what that does is it makes us a reasonably okay long-range army that gets out long-range by every other long-range army. And then essentially you're playing without 500 points. So I don't like the idea of allying in your War Dogs. I like having Custodes who are the masters of medium to short range combat really, really hone in onto that and play the medium to short range combat. So I got a question here. Have I been talking about tactical versus fixed? Yeah, guys, it's always tactical. Always tactical. Custodes are doing amazing work on tactical because like a lot of the missions just have to do with you holding the center objectives anyway, and you're gonna hold the center objectives unless you've already lost. Your Terminators have the redeploy, which basically it lets you play the objectives really well. You have the ability to kill just about everything, so you're going to be able to get the kill secondaries. You want tactical. You always want tactical. Maybe in a few niche matchups, you'll take fix for like bring it down if you're going into knights or if you're going into maybe just mechanized guard. But almost always tactical is an amazing job. Every single game I played with Custodes so far, bar one where I just dice happen. I've played probably 20 games in 10th edition right now. With Custodes so far, tactical is always the way to go. It's always the way to go. You're always going to score better points on that. The new missions are amazing for Custodes. We actually played the missions way better than we used to because the missions are variable. So, like, for example, if you're playing Servo Skulls, you get to move the objective at the end of your turn. So wherever you end up is where the objective moves, and that's how you score in that objective. That's so powerful for Custodes. I just love it. Big blobs of units does make tactical harder. At least you get to hide for the previous mentioned shooting stuff. Yeah, I mean, but you only really have to hide for turn one, right? Like maybe maximum turn two. And the way the objectives are placed, you should always be able to hide and hold at least a objective. We do really, really well on the mission where a hero that holds an objective in no man's land gets to score a bonus 3 points. We do incredible on that. We have the 1 CP to hold objectives even if we're no longer on it. So I don't know, we just crushed the objective game in this new 10th edition. So I'm stoked about the Stodes, guys. They're freaking awesome. I will actually be doing in-depth tactical analysis where I'm going to be breaking down different army lists. I'm going to be breaking down how to actually move your Custodes up the tabletop because it can be really challenging. Like, I love these questions about how do we use these big 10-man blobs. It's actually a great question because it can be really challenging to get them up the board. So what I'll do is I'll be breaking down these tactical strategies of how to actually move these blobs up the field. And I'll have dedicated videos to all of that. Actually, I'm doing my first tutorial on the movement phase, which is way different in this edition than it was in the previous edition. I should have that out in maybe a day tomorrow. So I have an entire tutorial on playing the mission and playing the game, and I'll be doing it very specifically for both the Orcs and the Custodes because those are my two primary armies. So just stick around for that. Thank you so much, everyone, for your attention. I love and appreciate you. If you made it this long, please, would you consider giving me a like and subscribe? I work really hard on these, and I've got a lot of information coming out. If you liked it, share it with your friends. I love you all. If you have any other questions, type it down below, and I do respond to literally every single comment. If you watch my last video, I think we had like something like 80 comments on it, and there's like 5,000 views. I respond to every comment, so I'll respond to all your comments, unless it's stupid. I'm just kidding. Even if it's stupid, I respond to it because I love you. But yeah, everyone have yourselves a freaking. Oh yeah, I will share this spreadsheet. It will be put into the comments. Maybe give me 20 minutes to make sure I do it right before you start busting my balls over it. But yeah, it's all posted. Everyone have a great day. I love you all. Happy Crumpin', my favorite wargamers. Peace out.